In the last 72 hours, a geopolitical threshold has been crossed that most Americans don't even know exists. While we sleep, a new arms race isn't happening on Earth, it's happening above us. And this time, China isn't following. They're leading. Satellites, hypersonic weapons, and a space force that's expanding faster than anything the West has seen since the space race itself. The question isn't whether we notice. The question is, what happens when these blurred orbits finally collide? For 60 years, the space race meant one thing: America versus Russia. Kennedy's vision. Armstrong's footprint. That era is over. And we're not ready for what comes next. As of July 2026, just this week, Chinese officials confirmed what intelligence analysts have been screaming about for months: their commercial space footprint has exploded from fewer than a dozen startups in 2014 to over 600 companies today. That's a 50-fold increase in a single decade. But here's the thing, in China, there's no real distinction between commercial and military. The government calls it the military-civil fusion strategy. What that means, in plain English, is that every satellite launch, every rocket, every piece of space infrastructure belongs to Beijing. Officially or unofficially, it doesn't matter. Their satellite manufacturing capacity has reached 4,100 to 5,000 units per year. Let that number sink in. SpaceX's Starlink has launched roughly 6,000 satellites total across 15 years. China is now manufacturing at a rate where they could match that entire constellation in roughly 18 months. And they're not building these for civilian broadband. Well, not primarily. The two massive state-backed constellations, Guowang and Thousand Sails, are being positioned explicitly to challenge Starlink's dominance. Guowang alone plans 12,992 satellites. Thousand Sails plans 15,000 more. But beneath that commercial cover? Military reconnaissance, communications relay for armed forces, and positioning for what experts call counter-space operations. That's a euphemism for warfare in orbit. Meanwhile, on the ground in places like Yumen, Hami, and Ordos in western China, satellite imagery shows something equally alarming: hundreds, potentially thousands, of new missile silos. These aren't for commercial satellites. The People's Liberation Army Rocket Force is modernizing China's nuclear triad with road-mobile, solid-fueled ICBMs. Mobile missiles that could be anywhere, making them impossible to target preemptively. This is the visible iceberg. What we don't see, what they're deliberately keeping hidden, is equally significant. Here's where this gets complicated. North Korea just tested a new military reconnaissance satellite. You didn't see this on the news much, but it changes things. Why? Because North Korea didn't do this alone. They had help. Russian help. Technical assistance from Moscow to design, build, and launch this satellite came alongside a larger arrangement that isn't talked about publicly. In exchange for deploying 45,000 North Korean troops to fight alongside Russia in Ukraine, troops that earned Pyongyang an estimated $620 million just in March 2026, Russia agreed to do something staggering: they stopped supporting Korean denuclearization. That's code for, Moscow is okay with North Korea becoming a nuclear power with advanced surveillance capabilities. Think about the geometry here. China expands its space footprint. Russia provides technical know-how. North Korea launches military satellites. This isn't three separate powers doing random things. This looks like a coordinated encirclement strategy, and the response so far has been limited. The real concern is that North Korea is now talking about building a green water navy, guided missile destroyers that can project power across their region. And those destroyers need satellite guidance, precision targeting, real-time reconnaissance from orbit. We're watching, in real time, the growth of an integrated space military-industrial network in Asia that looks less like the old Cold War and more like something entirely new: a multipolar, fragmented, weaponized orbital sphere where American dominance is being tested. The US isn't asleep anymore. But the response is complicated. The Pentagon has committed to placing the defense industrial base on what they're calling a wartime footing. That's not normal bureaucratic language. That's mobilization language. Since 2025, the Department of Defense has poured $7.6 billion into a single, focused goal: building a mine-to-magnet rare earth supply chain completely outside Chinese control. Why? Because China controls 70% of the world's rare earth mineral processing. They can shut it off tomorrow if they want. And those rare earth magnets are everything. They go into missiles, drones, satellites, radar systems, hypersonic weapons. Without them, our defense industrial base grinds to a halt. The DoD is also scaling domestic drone production to 300,000 units by 2027 through the Drone Dominance Program, backed by $1.1 billion in funding. They're rebuilding interceptor and missile stockpiles that were nearly depleted during the Middle East conflict. PAC-3 MSE production is being scaled to 2,000 missiles per year. THAAD to 400. Standard missile, 6 to over 500. This isn't fiscal prudence. This is preparation. But here's the critical gap: America is playing checkers while China plays chess in space. They're not just building satellites. They're building an integrated system: commercial launch capacity, manufacturing infrastructure, reconnaissance satellites, communication relays, and, most importantly, military counterspace capabilities. And American deterrence in this domain? It's practically non-existent. There's no credible public doctrine for space warfare. No clarity on what constitutes a red line. No consensus on what would happen if China destroyed one of our satellites. North Korea's satellite launch proves something important: space technology is proliferating. What was once the domain of superpowers is becoming accessible to regional powers. And that changes the calculus entirely. It's not about two players anymore. It's a crowded, contested orbital environment where miscalculation leads to cascading debris that could make entire orbital zones unusable for decades. This is called Kessler syndrome, and it's not theoretical anymore. It's a real, growing risk. The title of this story, Blurred Orbits, isn't poetic. It's precise. It describes a world where the line between civilian and military space infrastructure has been deliberately erased. China erased it deliberately with their military-civil fusion strategy. Now Russia and North Korea are moving the same direction. When you can't distinguish between a communications satellite and a military reconnaissance platform, you can't apply traditional arms control treaties. You can't negotiate limitations. You can't even verify compliance because the definitions themselves become meaningless. China's state-backed broadband constellations, those tens of thousands of satellites planned for Guowang and Thousand Sails, present a perfect example. Publicly, they're positioned as alternatives to Starlink. Cheap, globally accessible internet. Sounds benevolent, right? Underneath, each of those satellites is a potential reconnaissance asset, a communication node for military forces, a platform for electronic warfare. China doesn't need to announce their military use. The infrastructure itself can serve as the capability. And it's having an effect. Coastal nations in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Vietnam, others, are feeling pressure. Not from military invasions, but from this gray zone space where China's civilian and military power are hard to tell apart. Some of these nations are quietly hedging their bets with Beijing, despite tension with Washington, because they feel they need options. Meanwhile, in Western industrial policy circles, there's a dawning realization: space isn't an abstract domain anymore. It's where wars could be won and lost. It's where supply chains are secured or strangled. It's where strategic advantage, or vulnerability, begins. This realization is probably correct. But it's arriving late. And late, in space competition, could be costly. So where does this end? Realistically, it doesn't. Not quickly, anyway. What we're watching is the birth of a new era of great power competition. Not on land, not at sea, but in the one domain where no nation has been able to claim lasting dominance, space. China is betting that by the time America wakes up to the challenge, it will have built sufficient industrial capacity and technical sophistication that any attempt at parity will be too expensive, too slow, too late. Russia is betting that technical partnerships and military integration with allies will compensate for its industrial weakness. And North Korea is betting that space capability will grant it legitimacy and security it's never had before. The United States is betting that it can rebuild its industrial base fast enough, secure its supply chains, and establish deterrence before things spiral into orbital conflict that renders huge swaths of space unusable for everyone. That's not a wager with guaranteed odds. Here's what to expect next: more satellite launches. More tests of counter-space capabilities. More incidents in the gray zone, jamming, spoofing, cyber attacks on orbital infrastructure. Nations developing anti-satellite weapons more openly. Space transitioning from a domain of cooperation and civilian benefit to something that looks, more and more, like preparation for conflict. The question for Americans isn't just whether this challenges our dominance. It's whether there's the will to compete in a domain most people can't see, in a competition most people don't understand, against powers that appear to have already made their choice. China has chosen confrontation. North Korea has chosen capability. Russia has chosen partnership. The orbits are blurred. And they're only getting cloudier. Thanks for watching MindSnap. If you want to understand how space competition shapes geopolitics, subscribe for weekly deep dives into the stories no one else is covering.